Who fans, and welcome to the Big Blue Box podcast. My name's Gary.
My name's Adam.
And this is episode 392.
Yeah!
Hey, you lot. Welcome back to another week and another episode. We hope you are keeping well and safe and that you've all managed to do something Doctor Who related. You always wait just a bit too long.
Oh, I blame the delay. Blame the signal delay.
You're blaming the internet. All right.
I am. Yeah.
It's 392. We weren't recording last week. We had a bit of a busy one last week for both of us, but we are back here now to talk about absolutely nothing to do with new Doctor Who. There's been tumbleweeds everywhere. No news, no updates. There's been a couple of them, dude. There has been a couple of tiny little things, but literally not worth firing up the TARDIS, the TARDIS materialization sound effect for.
Not even worth the sound effect. Oh dear.
I'm sorry, mate. No. So we had an event here recently, and let's get these out of the way quick. We had an event here in the UK recently, which was for the Celestial Toymaker animated release. Yeah. Our Maria and Jordan were there, I think, at the BFI at South Bank here in London, over in London, sorry. And they said that was a really good event. Very, very mixed views and quite divisive feelings on the style of the animation for that one. And we'll speak about that another episode. But that was all going nuts on Twitter afterwards. And then the other thing is there's been a couple of directors announced for Series 15 over in the latest edition of Doctor Who magazine. So other than that, really quiet, mate, on the old Doctor Who front. But how have you been the last couple of weeks?
Yes, I've been pretty good, actually, thanks. Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of Doctor Who related stuff. I've been reading the John Nathan Turner production diary book, which I managed to pick up quite cheap out here. So this is basically a day-to-day sort of recording of what John did when he was in charge of Doctor Who from the moment he took over, and not to be confused with the other John Nathan Turner book, which is called something like Totally Tasteless or whatever, which is more of a biography type thing, which is really good, by the way. I read that a couple of years ago, but this is more of a sort of information book, if you like. It is like reading a diary. So it'll be like Saturday the 3rd, 1983. Jonathan Powell has decided that Doctor Who is to be axed, and Ian Levine is furious about it, and all this sort of stuff. And it's been quite interesting, actually. And I literally finished it last night because it's the nice thing about that type of book is because it is just information. You don't have to sort of get to an end of a chapter or anything. So I've been sort of really blitzing through it, and didn't really learn anything new. I mean, I think most of the stuff in there is sort of public knowledge now about the cancellation of Doctor Who and, the behind-the-scenes dramas. But it was quite funny, some of the stuff in there about... I didn't realise how many conventions and stuff that John jetted off to in between making Doctor Who. It's like, John should be in the Doctor Who office today, but he's actually on a plane to... Florida to go to a convention. So he really sort of took the opportunity to, and why not, to go to all these conventions and things. And there's some funny things in the book about Eric Saywood as well. Like Eric Saywood gets really bitter towards the end and starts putting in all these complaints about JNT to the office and stuff. So it was quite an interesting little read. So I've been doing that. And then was it last week or the week before when we did record? But I took a quick trip to San Diego for a weekend, which was really cool. Never been there before. And obviously on the plane, I'm wearing my Doctor Who t-shirt. I mean, I think most of my t-shirts are Doctor Who, so obviously I've got a Doctor Who t-shirt on. And as we're getting off the plane, the air stewardess sees me, and she's a little bit away from me. She's sort of down the aisle. And she goes, "Hey, who's your favourite Doctor?" And like everyone sort of looks at me as if, what's Doctor? Is there a Doctor on board? And I sort of went, Matt Smith, because I thought she might not know classics. She looked fairly young, so I went for a more than modern one. So I went, Matt Smith, love Matt. She went, Matt Smith, really? I said, she looked like shocked and horrified that I picked him. And I went, well, who's yours? And bearing in mind, we're sort of shouting over people who would just want to get off the plane, you know, and they're waiting for the stairs to arrive or whatever, you know what I mean? So we're all just stood up waiting to get off. And I'm like, who's yours? She went, David Tennant, obviously. And like, oh, obviously, yes. Well, Tennant is great. And
obviously.
So I got off. Obviously, David. I mean, of course I should have known it's David Tennant. So as I'm getting closer to where we start talking, I said, do you like any of the classic Doctors? I said, Tom Baker. Oh, Tom Baker was great, she says. We're having a little chat. So that was quite nice. It seems that, you know, even though I'm out here and Doctor Who is, although it's known out here, I would say not as well known. You know what I mean? But it still seems to follow me around and people still seem to pick up on it. I mean, I go to a lot of shops out here, like comic shops and second-hand book shops. And if ever I pick up a Doctor Who book, the people serve me are always so excited. So like the young chap who served me the other day in Half Price Books, I mean, he looked about 15, mate, but he was probably a little bit older. He went, hey, Peter Davison, great Doctor. I'm like, oh, and we start chatting about Doctor Who. So I love it. So it's kind of like, I appreciate that people out here, you know, still know and love the show, and it still resonates with people out here because it's you know, I mean, Texas is a big place, mate, and it's just nice to still feel there's a bit of, you know, love for Doctor Who in these sort of little areas that I'm visiting and stuff. So
yeah, that's cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
yeah, it's a nice moment. Yeah,
people are doing Doctor Who related stuff, or at least thinking about it, which is cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah. We were talking briefly about this on the Roundtable episode that went out last week, which was we were talking about the, you know, when series 14 drops in May, they're going to reset the numbering for that stuff, aren't they? So it's going to be season 1 and all that stuff. And we were talking about how those guys, the writing team, it was Maria, Jordan and Harry, and they were saying, you know, it's not the end of the world, but it's still, you know, a little bit weird to get your head around. And I was saying that due to the international market, primarily the US, now that the show is on Disney Plus over in the US as a, you know, the streaming stuff, it will be good for those guys because, and I think we said this, that although Doctor Who has always been international and globally televised and whatnot, it's clearly not been as huge as it has been here in its, you know, in the UK. So I think the reason for that is because Doctor Who's not on any, not to my knowledge anyway, it's not on any mainstream US broadcast channel, or, you know, I don't want to say terrestrial channel, but you know what I mean, like the main channels in the US. I don't think it was on there. It was on more of like the more low key channels, if you like. It was, I think it had a stint on Sci-Fi for a while. And then it had a stint on something else years ago. And there's another couple of channels where they play repeats or reruns of classic Doctor Who. But it's not been your mainstream televised media channels that play that. So in order for sort of US fans to not feel completely excluded from 60 years worth of Doctor Who storytelling, if you label it up as season 1, that feels like a more, you know, a nice jumping in point. Of course, season 1, you know, it sounds, you know, I mean, it sounds like it doesn't sound like, oh no, do I have to go back and watch all 13 series before I get what's going to be happening in this one? So you're absolutely right, mate. Although it's not, I don't think it's as big there as it is in the UK. It's great that wherever you go, like you said, you're in San Diego or go to your comic book shop in Texas, whatever, there are still people who are smiling about it and want to talk to you about it. So that's very cool.
Yeah. The numbering system is weird over here as well, because their collection box sets, you know, like the Blu-ray sets. So they number them season 1 if it's a new Doctor. So, for example, Tom Baker's first season, season 12, is called the Blu-ray collection Tom Baker season 1 here. Or John Pertwee's season is, you know, season 1, 2. So it's weird. They you know, that numbering system does my sort of OCD in a little bit, because I'm like, well, hang on. So season 12 is season 1, but season 1 is season 1 with William Hartnell, and I don't know quite how that works, but that's what they do on the box sets out here. So when we get another season 1 with Shooty, I guess we're going to have about 14, 15 season ones out here. It's like, excuse me, have you got season 1 of Doctor Who? Well, which one? The first Doctor, the second Doctor, season 1? Which season 1 are you talking about? Oh, it's, you know, so yeah, it is very different out here.
Madness, mate. Absolute madness.
But madness. But I do get why they've done that with Shooty. I think. I mean, I don't like it. I think it should. Doctor Who, I think, should feel like a continuation. Like, a lot of people don't like the phrase "New Who," you know, because they see it as all one thing, which I kind of agree with. Although I don't mind the word "New Who," but it does make it feel like it's a not a reboot, but you know what I mean. Calling it season 1 does feel like, oh, it's another new start. So is this new Who? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
totally.
It is a bit odd. I would prefer if they just called it season. What would it be? 15, 14, whatever.
It'd be 14, wouldn't it? The new one that's landing in May.
Yeah, I think it's a Disney Plus thing though. They don't want, because they're not going to put the older stuff on Disney Plus in the US as far as I'm aware. So they don't want people saying, hang on, this is season 14. Where's season 1 to 14? It's not on here. I guess that's why they're doing it.
Exactly, mate.
You know?
Yeah,
whereas
stuff,
in the UK you can watch them all, but out here they don't have the older stuff. So I think that's why they're doing it.
I read you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's been the sort of highlight, the top level excitement in the
shouting it across an airplane at an stewardess about Doctor Who. What about you, mate? Have you been up to anything? Are you reading any? Have you tracked down your Doctor Who book yet? What was the one you were after from 10 Acre Films? Have you tracked it down?
I have tracked it down, and as you've just mentioned it, actually, I checked it the other day, and they're back in stock now on 10 Acre Film Books, or you know, whatever the website is. So I will order that now. So it's in stock. So I finished the first book, The Long Game, which is I've really enjoyed rereading that. It's a fantastic book.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, very cool. So I'm looking forward to getting the other one about Classic Who, and I'll smash through that. Other than that, the other thing that's been, this is so rock and roll, dude. Our fandom knows no bounds in terms of showing our appreciation. So the highlight of my week has been rearranging the bookshelf that houses all of the DVDs and Blu-rays for Doctor Who.
Oh, I always get great satisfaction out of doing that.
Oh, dude, for you and I, that it literally is a highlight of the week or the weekend. But you know, for Joe Public, they're like, oh, okay, you do you. If that floats your boat, mate, then you carry on.
That feeling of sitting back and staring at the organised shelf cannot be underestimated. It's
a massive.
I don't care what. It's just that, and that exhale of breath of delight and sheer satisfaction of look at that.
Oh yeah, it's a huge dopamine hit that is just and then what sort of caps it all off lovely is, and it sounds like a bit daddified, like your dad sort of does this thing. Your dad normally does this stuff about looking over a car in the garage or looking at a well put together shed in the garden, but you stand there with one of your hands in your pocket, the other one holding a cup of tea, and just surveying the greatness that you've just achieved, and just got that slow nod and that appreciative, like, yep, all is right with the universe now. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I'm with you. This is something only us geeks can understand.
And that's what I did. Yeah, I had a cup of tea afterwards. Stood there and looked at it, and a bit of pride was beaming on the face. Like everything is in place. Like all of the new Blu-ray sets are all there on their own shelf in order, with some space as well, ready for the new ones. I think one's launching soon, isn't it? We've got the series 15, I think it's coming out soon. Yeah, and then I've got all of the sort of in-betweeny ones where it's like the series 1 box set with Eccleston, through to series 9 or whatever it is. I think I stopped collecting the box sets at series 11, I think, series 12, something like that. But anyway, I've got those ones, and then I've got all the Blu-rays and all the animated releases they've done of the steelbooks, and then I've got the Blu-ray releases where I double dipped for series 1 to 4, and then I've got them again on the box set. So, and then you've got that special edition box that came out that's got some McGann stuff in it, and it's got the David Bradley documentary and Adventure in Space and Time. So I've got all that on there, and then the bottom shelf is just full up of all the classic DVDs that I'd collect. You know, the ones, the good old standard DVD classic Who's that have got the roundels with the in the grey bit, you know, so I've got all that in the box. So, dude, it's looking very, very neat and unorganised. So if I want to watch a particular something, pretty much with my eyes closed, I can reach over and pick it off. So it's great.
I'm loving the sound of it. And also, there is nothing worse than going to get something to watch, thinking you know where it is, and then you can't find it. I had this recently with something, actually. It was just before I flew back to the US. I can't think what it was. It was a TV series, and I knew that I'd got it. I was like, I have got that DVD, and I thought I knew where it was, and I went to get it, and it wasn't there. And I spent ages. I went into my little shed outside the house. I was going mad trying to find this DVD. Anyway, I did eventually find it, and it just got tucked behind some other DVDs in the house. But yeah, there's nothing more satisfying than looking on your shelf and seeing all the seasons in order, and then, like you said, all the animations together, all the steelbooks together. Oh, bliss, sheer bliss. And yeah, you're right, season 15 will be out soon, so you better make a little space for that, because that's coming very soon, actually. Yeah,
I think there's space on that for another 3 on that shelf. There's depending on how wide they are, because you know some of them are different depending on number of discs and whatnot.
Season 20 was huge, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. So there's room for approximately 3 more sets before I have to look at either sort of putting them on top of those ones or, you know, making my another shelf or whatever. I'll figure it out, but yeah, it's looking good. So
it should be all right then, because I reckon we'll get 3 this year. That's what I reckon we're going to get. I think another 2 after this. So you'll probably be all right this year, but then next year you're going to have to start rethinking things.
Yep.
You're going to have a little trip to IKEA to get a new unit.
Oh, mate. Yeah, I've already thought that. Yeah. I'm like, I wonder if IKEA are still making these bookshelves. I have to look into that. So that's
March
been...
March 18th it's out, mate.
18th. Oh, cool.
Season 15.
Yeah.
So it's coming.
Yeah, and that's been the highlight of our week. Nothing else to report, unless you've done something crazy that we're not aware of. No. Okie dokie. With that being said, then, we're going to crack on with our review. Before we do that, make sure that you are following the podcast on your fave podcast app. If you are just listening to this episode for the first time, or if you're picking out random episodes, then make sure that you do follow, because that way you won't miss an episode when it lands every single week. Normally on a Friday morning, we put these out, and then once a month, you also get access to the round table episodes where we draft in the writing team and we speak about all sorts of Doctor Who related stuff and just... sit down and have a good old chinwag about that stuff. You can listen to that, as I said, on whatever podcast app you're on. We're on all the podcast networks and stuff, but you can also listen on the website, which is bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk. You can listen for free over there, and you can also check out all of our writing team's reviews and articles and event roundups and all that stuff. So check that out. We're on the socials too. There's links on the website. Give us a like and a follow on those. We chat Doctor Who throughout the week. And we have a very cool free Discord server as well. So jump in there. You can chat Doctor Who with lots of other Who fans. It's very cool in there. And lastly, don't forget to remember to check out my co-host channel on YouTube. It is, of course, the famous Geeks Handbag.
Infamous Geeks Handbag. Yeah, go check out my YouTube channel. Infamous. I don't even know what that means.
Dude, don't be so modest. Come on.
Don't be so, yeah. Definitely, yeah.
He is being modest because there's literally thousands of hours worth of geeky content there. He's been doing it for years. There's like so much cool stuff on there. So go and check out all the cool Doctor Who plus other geeky stuff on there. So that's the Geeks Handbag over on YouTube, and there'll be a link on the website for that as well. Right, dude.
Sweet.
Review for this week. Tell us what we're doing.
Yes, so it's a 4th Doctor story this week, and it's Destiny of the Daleks.
I believe the planet is called Skaro.
Skaro? So, all darkness has ended. The eternity of waiting is over. Davros lives!
Our mission is directed against a force known as the Daleks. Doctor?
Yes.
Where are you going?
Dalek hunting.
You know the Daleks?
Oh. Better than you could possibly imagine.
Doctor, look out! See and locate! Exterminate!
Exterminate.
No, is that Zippy doing that voice? No, George.
Just imagine Zippy with a little Dalek helmet on, trying to do that, and Bungle with a doctor costume on or something.
I wonder how many of our listeners know what we're talking about. I know a large portion will, but there will be a section of the listeners going, "What the? What?
There will
lost
be.
It.
There will be. If
They've
you don't know what we're
completely lost
talking about, we're not going to tell you. You can leave it as a bit of a
Just
mystery.
Google.
Google rainbow and just
Yeah.
see what comes up. Yeah, or YouTube rainbow. Yeah. Okay. Destiny of the Daleks. It was first broadcast back on the 1st of September 1979 and finished up at the end of the month on the 22nd. It's a 4-parter. It was written by Terry Nation, directed by Ken Grieve, with script editor on this one, Douglas Adams. And music by old Dudders, Dudley Simpson. Stars Tom Baker, Lala Ward, and then about half a dozen supporting cast members. And the synopsis is fairly meaty on this one, dude.
Yeah.
They had a good one on this one. So the Doctor and a newly regenerated Romana arrive on Skaro to find that the Daleks are using explosive charges and a group of humanoid slave workers to mine the planet in search of their creator Davros. A stalemate has arisen in an interplanetary war that the Daleks are waging against the robotic Movellans, and the hope is that Davros will be able to give them the edge. A force of Movellans has arrived on Skaro, determined to thwart the Daleks' plan. Davros is found in the ruins of the old Khaled city and immediately revives, his life support systems having held him in suspended animation since his apparent death. He quickly deduces that the battle computers of the two warring races are locked in a logical stalemate, and that he can break this by introducing an element of intuition. The Movellans, having reached the same conclusion, want the Doctor to do likewise for them. Davros attempts to destroy the Movellan ship using a suicide squad of Daleks loaded with bombs, but the Doctor returns to the Khaled city and tricks him into inadvertently detonating them before they reach their target. The Movellans are deactivated and Davros is cryogenically frozen on board their ship until the freed slave workers can take him to Earth and ensure that he is put on trial for his crimes.
Blimey.
That was a good one, wasn't it?
That is a meaty synopsis, no mistake.
Yeah, we don't need to do much now. That's your lot.
Let's do a one-word review and be done. Let's get down the pub.
Do you know what? Normally the synopsis is something like the Doctor arrived in the TARDIS and stuff went down.
Yeah.
So, watch and enjoy. So that was a good one. So
that was good.
Dear listener, you now know the story of Destiny of the Daleks if you haven't watched it prior to listening to this podcast episode. So dude, off the bat then, what are your thoughts on this one?
That was almost an audio book reading, by the way. That was cool. Destiny of the Daleks, mate. I do have a soft spot for this one. It's I do quite enjoy watching it, but I do also recognise its faults. And to use one of your analogies that you sometimes say on the podcast, it is very much a story that gets stuck in one gear. Like, I love all the stuff at the start, all the stuff on Skaro and the location work and the cliffhanger where Davros is just wiggling his fingers, which are covered in cobwebs, and the Daleks bursting through the wall. And I think there's some great stuff in this story, and I do always enjoy watching it. But it just, and I can't quite put my finger on why, it just is a bit flat. It does seem to just get in that third gear and stay in it. So the sort of third and fourth part of it, I always feel they're just a bit flat. There's no sort of big war between the Movellans and Daleks, which it's building up to. The Mavellans, when they're killed off, do this so easily by just having these little power packs taken off them, to these funny sort of slow deaths. And I don't know, it doesn't quite come together. So I don't think it's the best Dalek story by a long shot, and I think a lot of fans feel the same way. It's not up there as a classic Dalek story or one of the best, but there are lots of things in it I love. I think Tom and Lala are really fun together in this one. I love the rock, paper, scissors stuff, and I think they sort of hit the ground running as a duo. I like Lala Ward as Romana too, and I think she works well with Tom at this point before they start getting into a relationship behind the scenes and things turning very sour. I think at this point they're still sort of looking at each other when they say the lines, and there is some nice humorous bits in it, I think, between the two of them. So I'm going to say, mate, overall I like the story. I find it enjoyable, but I acknowledge its faults, and I don't think it's a classic. So it is a bit middle of the road. I'm slightly on the fence with it, but I enjoy watching it, and I enjoyed watching it again these last 2 nights. So it is getting a thumbs up from me. I do think it's got some great stuff in it. What do you reckon?
Up. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, what do you?
Do you know what, dude? I don't actually mind this one.
I had a feeling I wasn't sure where you'd be on this. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I know a lot of people view this one as one of the worst Dalek stories, and I agree with you. It's not the strongest one in terms of Dalek stories. If you put them all together, it's never going to be number. I don't know. Very rarely would this be in someone's top 3 for top Dalek stories and stuff, and that's fine. That's all good. But I do have a bit of I wouldn't say a soft spot, but I do think it's a little bit underrated most of the time. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people will say it's slow and the Daleks are subpar and Davros is not as good as his previous outings and other times that you see him and stuff like that, which we'll get onto in a second. But I don't know, there's something cool about the kind of escape and evade and trying to... One thing that I do like about this story is that although the Daleks are not at their sort of most menacing and strong, they do command a little bit of kind of on-screen... people are hiding from them throughout most of the story, which is cool. If you think about another story, a bit like, and this is one that I've grown to absolutely love. It's one of my favourites over the years, as you know, but Remembrance of the Daleks. There's quite a few scenes in that story where people are just sort of almost jogging alongside the Daleks and having a bit of a laugh with them and spinning them around and pushing them about and stuff. And whereas in this one, when someone sees a Dalek, it's like, right, we're in the beep, so they go into hiding and stuff. So they do have this kind of on-screen presence where they are scaring the beep out of a lot of people, and people are hiding from them. They don't want to get captured and stuff. So, and they also exterminate a few people as well. They're not, they don't hold back in that respect. So yeah, maybe not the strongest for those guys, but I don't know, there's something still cool about them. And I think Tom's really good in this as well. I think
Tom's good in it.
Yeah. Him and Lala Ward, they're really good together. Like you said before, things went a bit south behind the scenes, which kind of affected them a little bit on screen. Like this story, the chemistry is very good, and especially the opening scene in the TARDIS when she's going through different forms and picking an outfit.
Yeah,
and, all that's really cool.
Oh, yeah, that's really fun.
Yeah, and then like you said, a bit later on with the whole rock, paper, scissors thing and all that. It's really great stuff from those two. And I think Tom... And there's another bit as well where Tom and Davros are trapped in this area where they barricaded the door. And
love that bit.
Yeah, that bit. So when Davros is basically saying, when we met before, it was this, but now the Daleks are, they're trying to do this, but they failed and I'm the saviour. And then, he winds the Doctor up a little bit, and he kind of reacts and... So you can tell
the bit with the bomb is good, isn't it? Where he's like, I will drop this into Davros's chair and all this stuff. It's great. I love all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's scenes like that really sort of, I wouldn't say save the story, but really, engage with you a little bit throughout the 4 parts. So this could have been a real sloggy 6-parter, dude, couldn't it? This could have been one of those. So thankfully, it's 4 parts, which is not too bad. But you can see that the chemistry between Davros and the Doctor is so frosty, and so like you can see that the way that Tom's playing it is that he's so eager to stop the Daleks' plan, whatever that is at that point. But he's also, you can tell that he's affected by the fact that he didn't stop them when he had the opportunity back in Genesis of the Daleks.
Yeah.
You can tell that that's really playing on his mind as he's trying to, stop their plan this time around. So some great stuff in all that respect, dude. So I do want to kick off with a positive. It's not a terrible story at all by any means. And I do quite enjoy watching this one. I mean, I think somewhere through episode 3, I start to not drift off a bit, but I do start to like, okay, I'm eager to get to the finale now in episode 4. So episode 3 has a couple of great scenes, don't get me wrong. Like you mentioned with the bomb with Davros and stuff like that. But then once that's out the way, you kind of want to just get the Magellan Nova device stuff out the way and get on to episode 4, where it starts to really kind of ramp up a bit. So, yeah, I like it, mate. It's not one of those ones where, at events when we're talking to other Who fans and it's like Destiny of the Daleks is mentioned and people start rolling their eyes and it's like, oh, God. I'm not like that with it at all. I do think it's a good watch.
I think it's enjoyable, isn't it? Like, I've seen this story a few times, and I watched it 2 episodes at a time this week, and I really enjoyed rewatching it. I wonder if it perhaps suffers from being compared to Genesis, as it's the sort of follow-up to it, because I guess the Daleks aren't quite as menacing as they are in Genesis. Davros is played by a different actor who isn't, quite as good when you compare him to Michael Wisher. So there are if you compare the two, I think maybe that's what drags it down. But if it just stands on its own, if we didn't have Genesis of the Daleks, for example, I think this does stand up quite well on its own. I think it is just, it's unfortunate when you start making comparisons to Genesis that that shows up its faults, if you like. And I mean, David Goodison as Davros, although he's not as good as Michael Wisher, and also they haven't treated his voice enough. I think that would have made such a difference if he sounded a little bit more like Davros, and not to mention the very ill-fitting mask. He's hindered a bit because his actual performance is quite good, isn't it? But he is hindered by lots of. Plus, it looks like he's having to sort of. There's obviously some pedals in the chair because he's really struggling to get across the studio at one point. So,
mate, before we go on, I just want to interject there. There are some classic Who stories where something happens that's not meant to be funny. But either one of us or both of us just end up falling about uncontrollably with laughter. There was one scene that happened to me. I literally almost spat my tea out. I had to pause it and stop laughing for about a minute and then carry on watching it. It's one of those scenes where it's just after that bit, actually, when the Doctor's like, he's basically got Davros hostage. And so the Daleks start executing humans until, you know that bit? So that's not the funny bit. Obviously, that bit's quite dark. No. But that all happens. The Doctor escapes. And then Davros, says his sort of closing line for that scene. Then 2 things happen. So he starts to really go nuts on it straight away. Like he's either peddling something or he's trying to get traction on the floor. And he's like, you can see his whole body. It's like he's riding a bike almost. He almost...
That's what I'm picturing underneath it, yeah.
It's almost like you can hear like squeaky bike pedals. Like
actually, you can, I think, in one scene. I'm pretty sure you can. Or is it a Dalek? There's definitely some squeaking, yeah.
So that's the first bit that cracked me up. He's like, he starts really going for it, and then he picks up some speed, and then he tries to sort of power slide out of the doorway, and he ends up clanging into the
wall. There are a few moments in this story where I was like, if we were watching this together, we'd be cracking up.
Yeah. But mate, that was me gone for like a good solid minute, like solid cracking up. But yeah, sorry. Actually, we were going to come on to. Actually, no, we'll save it when we get onto that stuff of
onto the cast.
Yeah. But in terms of story, mate, what did you think too? Because as I've said very succinctly in the synopsis, the story is that the Daleks are at war with the Movellans, and they're at a stalemate. They can't sort of get one up on each other at this point because this kind of logical mindset and this sort of system is in place that prevents either of them from having one-upmanship on the other one, because the Movellans are androids, robots, aren't they? And then the Daleks are, sort of driven by sort of logical, decision-making and so on. So the Daleks want to find Davros so that he can be like the mastermind sort of planner to, like, as they put it, to inject a little bit of intuition into it to sort of break the logical cycle. And then the Movellans want to stop them from doing that. So they both end up on Skaro. The Doctor just happens to be, it's a massive coincidence, the Doctor just happens to land there due to the TARDIS randomizer, which you can question if it is truly random. Maybe the TARDIS had a little nod there, pushed him in, nudged him in the right direction to stop that. Who knows? But so the story's really simple, dude. What did you make to that? Because other than some of the humans being captured and that guy that we think is going to capture Romana at the beginning, who's that guy who helps them quite a lot? Tyson, yeah. Other than that, it's pretty simple, dude. Did you think the story was sort of adequate enough to house a Dalek story, or would you like to see more? I mean, it was fairly cool for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the actual premise of the story is fine. It's got sort of a lot of Terry Nation's typical, what do they call them? The same tricks that he always brings out. Tropes, that's the word.
Yep.
So, the Terry Nation tropes, he's using a lot of the same stuff from other stories that he's done before, like the radiation and Dalek slaves and all this sort of thing. But I think I'm right in saying that I think Douglas Adams had a bit of a hand in this, didn't he? I mean, although Terry Nation's sort of credit as writing it, I think Douglas Adams actually had quite a lot of input in the script, from what I understand. So the radiation thing gets dropped very quickly, actually. It wasn't until I rewatched this that I even noticed that. So in the first 2 episodes, the Doctor and Romana are taking these pills because of the radiation, and Terry Nation seems to have this obsession with radiation. He writes it into every script, I think, that whether it's Doctor or Blake 7, there's always a radiation thing that they've got to take a pill for. But did you notice that, mate, that storyline sort of got forgotten after episode 2? Like, it doesn't get mentioned again. So those pills must have been really strong. They must have been like Nurofen extras or something. But but no, the storyline itself, mate, I think is pretty cool. And even the Movellans themselves, I think, are an interesting idea. I mean, there is this argument about, well, the Daleks aren't really robots, they're mutant blobs in casing, and so there is, I can see you could go down a bit of a wormhole with that. But if you don't think too much about it, I think the storyline's pretty enjoyable, actually. I think it's quite a cool idea. And I don't know about the realisation of the Movellans, mate. I mean, I quite like them. I think, it's an interesting look. I think the concept of them is good. It's just this thing about, the battery packs or whatever it's supposed to be, when it gets removed and they just sort of... They're very easily defeated for somebody that's supposed, that the Daleks are frightened of. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't quite work that out. Why are the Daleks so frightened of these? Because they don't seem anywhere near as sort of scary as perhaps a Cyberman or something like that. Like if the Daleks are coming up against them, you think, oh no. The Movellans don't seem as equal, but maybe it's more about, like you said, the logical thinking. And there is a great scene, isn't there, where the Doctor tries to explain to one of the Movellans about the fact that they're both thinking the same thing. Does he use the rock, paper, scissors thing? Yeah, he does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So he uses that to explain, why you're never going to win, because you're both equally intelligent or whatever. So, or you're both so mathematical that you can't sort of outwit each other. So I thought that was a pretty cool idea as well. So yeah, overall, mate, storyline, I think it's pretty good. I just wish it had a sort of more exciting ending. It does seem to just end, and when the credits rolled last night, I thought, I enjoyed that, but it's just that, isn't it? It doesn't have that, wow, that was cool, love that, part 4 was good, you know what I mean? It doesn't have that extra kick that I think the story needs. But
I think I know what you mean.
Yeah, but it's still good.
Yeah, and in terms of the ending, it's I think a lot of classic Who wraps up like that. Over the years that we've reviewed plenty of it, I think there's been so many stories where it gets to the end and you think, well, there's only like 7 minutes to go, and they're still at like the climax of the story where the whichever race of monster or alien is being defeated, and you think, well, there's not going to be much of a goodbye because there's 7 minutes of runtime left, and about three of those minutes or 2 is like end credits. So you think, they want to wrap this up quick, and it often ends with just the Doctor and whoever companion it is at the time arriving back at the TARDIS, and the Doctor says a funny little quip, and then that's it. They're off to the next thing. So, do you know what? I think the more we've reviewed it over the years, I think it's just par for the course, mate. I think a lot of classic Who, if you compare it to a lot of modern Who, especially some of the David Tennant era stuff, where you have big, long, drawn-out goodbyes in some of those, and the final act is often, one of the Doctors looking forlorn about something or down about something, or there's something that he's not telling the companions, and do you know what I mean? That sort of thing. I think back in classic Who, it was more right, that's that job done, on to the next thing.
On to next week.
Yeah, no sitting around dwelling on stuff. We got stuff to do. Somewhere the tea's getting cold and all that. So, yeah, although it's a quick wrap-up, dude, it does end quite quick, but I think that's a lot of classic Who, mate.
And also, it's one of those stories, I think, that's got lots of nice moments, isn't it? So sometimes we've reviewed a story, and especially in the Fourth Doctor era, I think you've sort of said, like, the story was okay, but there was none of those nice Tom moments, or there was none of that sort of interaction between the Doctor and the companion. Those moments we look out for. There's been like the odd story, isn't there, where we've said it needed like a nice moment between the third Doctor and Joe in that story, because it was just very flat. This one's almost the opposite. It's got it's a story of lots of nice moments. Like you said, the scene with the Doctor and Davros, and love how tetchy Davros is with the Doctor, and them winding each other up. Great scene. The Lala and Tom doing the rock, paper, scissors, K9 having laryngitis, Princess Astra coming out and being the Neuromana. It's a story of nice moments rather than a sort of a really great story, if you know what I mean, overall sort of thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and we had that most. Do you know what? It's mostly with Tom. I think we've had that.
I think so.
Yeah, mostly with the Tom Baker stories where, excuse me, the script or the story might not be as strong as some of his other stuff, or we feel like he himself might not be firing on all cylinders for whatever reason, and so. But then the story doesn't really become less enjoyable because you have these lovely moments or these really nice scenes between. It's normally him and other characters, isn't it? These lovely scenes and stuff. And so yeah, I totally get that, dude. I think we had that with this story for sure. And what capped off that whole scene with him and Romana as well with the rock paper scissors thing was when he sort of throws the curveball, which is the jelly baby, and that. Do you know what I mean? That really sort of that sums up exactly what sort of our Doctor at that time anyway is all about. It's not. I think Terry Nation could have easily written something that was very science fiction-y serious in that point to try and deduce what's going on in terms of the logical stuff with the Movellans and whatnot, but to just put the fate of the entire thing down to a game of rock paper scissors, it's just genius in my opinion.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah. And then
it's really fun.
Yeah, it's just a really cool, quirky old Doctor Who thing. And then when you throw in the jelly baby thing as well, which is just quintessential, that's the Fourth Doctor doing it's just so cool. That was a real highlight. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what they pretend to have the argument over, because that made me laugh as well when they finally. He's like, no, I didn't. Yes, you did. Is it over the jelly baby? Or
it is.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's a great scene. It's Tom and Lala working really well together, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, definitely. The story didn't look too bad either, dude. I mean, the props that they used for the Movellans sort of laser hand things are a bit questionable. They look like the sort of stuff that you build in primary school to take home to your mum. It's like, look, mum, I've made this kitchen
I made it out of a
utensil
wash.
thing.
Yeah, I made it out of some washing up liquid tube.
Yeah. So they looked a bit, I don't know what the word, basic, a little bit underwhelming, I suppose. But in terms of, the rest of it, the Daleks didn't look, they've looked better.
Oh, they're quite battered.
Yeah, they've looked better, haven't they? I'm thinking more of
I don't mind that because I just think it's like they've sort of been in the wars. Because people often say, "Oh, they look terrible in this episode, in this story," but I think, well, they've probably just had a bad couple of weeks of being shot at and blown up. So the props themselves do look a bit. There's lots of broken bits on them. One of them seems to have a little side mirror attached. I don't know what that was for. Don't know if you noticed that, mate. It's like this little strip down one of them. They've sort of looked like they've been quickly repaired. Ready for studio floor, but they do look a bit bad. It doesn't bother me though. I think it's quite cool.
It is. I don't know. Is it cool? Yeah,
well,
it's kind of cool.
It just looks like they've been through the wars rather than looking. Because one of my favourite Daleks are the Imperial, the white and gold, because they look pristine and in remembrance. I love how they look, but they're almost too clean if you think about it. Like Daleks want to look like they've been a bit through the wars, don't they? So
true. That's true. Yeah,
but they are battered. There's no mistake about it.
Yeah, Davros looked all right, apart from the close-ups with his with the mask and stuff and around the mouth. It just wasn't quite fitting. I assume it was the same mask that Michael Wisher used back in. It looks like the same stuff.
Apparently, it was, mate. Can you believe they didn't have? Well, I suppose this is classic Who, but. I mean, I don't know. I just think it would be apparently it had been in storage for a while, and it doesn't fit his face properly, which is why it looks so bad. But I bet it stank. I mean, surely could they not have afforded a new mask? I mean, I guess not. This is this is classic Who, isn't it? But it really does show. It's it doesn't fit him very well.
But the opening scenes with him were good. When he's covered in cobwebs and
I love that.
That was all cool, but it's not until later on, when you get the close-ups. But I'm also thinking about the location stuff as well, like down in Dorset, some of the quarries and the caves. And
I've always wanted to go to that location, mate. Because it's been in Blake 7 as well, and it's Blake. It's in a great episode of Blake 7. But it's one of those locations I desperately want to go to.
Windspit Quarry. As a Skaro, but they did well to get the TARDIS prop in that tight little space inside the cave.
Yeah,
bloody hell. That would have been a hairy moment for sure. To me, to you, left a bit. left. No.
I get the feeling they couldn't fit the light on top because I'm pretty sure when it dematerialised at the end, it's a visual effect. Because it looks it's in the wrong place. I think it's slightly too far to the right.
Oh, right. Right.
So I reckon they've I reckon they've left the roof off to get it in there. Is my guess, but I'm only guessing.
Yeah, that bloody TARDIS prop. It just didn't. The opening scenes as well. It always amazes me why they never just spent £100 on some timber and just elevated that TARDIS set just a little bit off the concrete floor because it's really light coloured. It ends up just covered in so many scuff marks and dents and nicks and black. It just everything all over the floor. And then on top of that, where the central console is, because it's on a concrete floor, all the sort of power cables that power all the lights and electric on the console, it's just gaffer tape to the floor.
Yeah, I know.
And then it goes up inside one of the roundels on the set wall sort of thing. It just looks so bad, man. I mean,
some of those roundels are thick with dirt and dust.
It looks terrible. I mean, that's surely like the producers or the set designers or whoever was working on it back in the day. It must have just been, can we not just do something? And they were like, no, you haven't got the time. No time, no budget, just get on with it.
Do you know what, mate? We've said about this, about the time thing and about how the studio lights were turned off at 10 o'clock dead, and if you didn't get it filmed, you didn't get it filmed. So this is interesting because I was reading in the John Nathan Turner production diary that I've just finished, and he has to write to the head of whoever, Jonathan Powell, every time they overrun. So it's like January the 15th, John Nathan Turner writes a letter to Jonathan Powell explaining why they overrun by 7 minutes.
Oh,
so he had to
God.
do this every time they overrun, and he had to explain it. And sometimes Jonathan Powell would write back to him and be like, but you haven't explained, I want more information. Why were you 13 minutes over 10 o'clock? And I'm like, blemmin' heck, really? For I think one of them was 4 minutes, and Jonathan Powell's on JNT's back, demanding to know, and he's like, most of the time it's because the TARDIS rotor wasn't working. He's like, the TARDIS rotor wasn't working again, and we had to get somebody to sit underneath it and push it up and down, and that took an extra 4 minutes. So really, I think we've sort of underestimated how severe it was that at 10 o'clock they stopped. So they were probably like, John, do we have time to give this a quick duster? No, get filming, action now. Put that duster away. We haven't got time. I really think, mate, it's back in the day, mate, it was just get that set up, film, go. It's like there's no time for it,
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. It's just there's just never enough hours in the day to do that stuff. Even something simple like that. Can we just run a mop across the floor? It's like, no. Just action and then away. So yeah, I totally get that. It just I mean, I guess that's part of the charm, right? I'm saying this as in a kind of, in a negative light, but it all adds up, doesn't it, to the whole, the gorgeous vibe and everything that classic Who is. That's what makes it, what it is. When someone walks into the room and you're watching it and they think, look at the state of that. You think,
look at the state of that.
I can't be bothered to explain to you why it's all a state. It's just, that's what it is. So I get it, man. So yeah, visually.
It is part of the charm. And I got to tell
Yeah, go on, dude.
It is part of the charm, mate. No, I was going to say, it is part of the charm. And one of my favourite things in that letter that John Nathan Turner had to write to explain the overrun was Brian Blessed. It was 2 minutes to 10, and he had to burst through this wall and say this line. And he burst through the wall. It's obviously during the Colin Bacon era. Burst through the wall as King Ivanov, or whatever he was called, and couldn't remember his lines, so just swore expletives for 30 seconds. And then the lights went out, and they were like, we have not got time to refilm this. And now I don't understand. I would have just redubbed it, but for whatever reason they couldn't. So they had to remount the whole set the following day just to refilm this because Brian Blessed swore, 2 minutes before the lights went out, and they could not re-record it that night. The lights were out, and JNT had to write and explain, I'm sorry, but due to a load of expletives being said, we had to remount the set, which probably cost thousands, and remount that whole just for that one scene. So JNT was not happy with Brian Blessed that day.
Well, you can, understandable. Jeez.
Yeah,
that's
you
funny.
can understand it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So visually, all the location stuff looks really good. Some of the interior stuff is not too bad. Like the main part of the Magellan ship and stuff looks really cool. It's got a nice sort of minimalistic light white aesthetic and stuff, which looks really cool. And then sort of the underground caverns and chasms and stuff that the Daleks are drilling down into, where they go and find Davros and stuff. All looks fairly standard old Doctor Who and stuff. It's all good. Some characters then, dude. Let's talk why. So, very quick side note to the character stuff. We don't hear any voice work from what's his name? John Leeson for K9 in this, do we? So K9's in it. Yeah.
It's Roy Skelton, isn't it?
Roy Skelton, yeah.
Does the coughing.
Yes, there's not even any proper dialogue for K9, is it? And there's a lot of myths around John Leeson was something was wrong with him and, whatever. It was just he was unavailable. That was all it was. Yeah. And also most of the prop was in a bad way at that point. So it wasn't able to be, radio controlled to be wheeled across the, even in a straight line almost. So they were in the process of repairing all that and sorting the prop out. So it wasn't going to be a very K9 active story anyway. But he is in it at the beginning. The Doctor, Tom Baker's having a bit of a a one-way conversation, it seems, with a circuit board that's sort of attached to the inside of K9. But yeah, so John Leeson is not credited as, the voice of K9 as you would expect in this one, or even though K9's in it. But yeah, I think it would have marred the waters a little bit having K9 in this one. I'm not sure about how you feel, but usually I love K9, and for the most part, the stories he's in, when the prop's behaving, it's pretty sweet. But honestly, I don't think he would have added a great deal to this one anyway. So it's no biggie.
No, I agree with you. And as much as I love K9, and I do, I can't see him really adding anything to this story. And he would have been a nightmare on those rocky location and stuff. I mean, the Dalek struggle, I bet that was another scene you were laughing at when the Daleks are wobbling. They're sort of clearly walking, but trying to make it look like they're gliding across, on location. So yeah, I don't miss K9 in this one. I hate to say it because I love him, but yeah, I wasn't too bothered that he was kind of written out of it, for want of a best phrase. Yeah,
same. Yeah. What about so the character we mentioned earlier then? So Tyson,
yeah.
Played by Tim Barlow. He was a cool character. He reminded me of. And when we first saw him, he reminded me of an old sort of Hammer horror style character. He's got that bone structure and that crazy hair. He almost looks like, or even like, who's the butler character in the Addams Family? Is it Lurch? No.
Lurch?
No, I can't remember. Anyway, so he had this real sort of old horror vibe. So for the first few minutes where he's chasing Romana, and you think that he's after her for, not to help her or anything, but to capture her for whatever reason. Perfect casting for that bit, because you thought, wow, this is a pretty scary, creepy old dude that's running after Romana. But he turns out to be a pretty cool character. He does a lot to help, the Doctor and Romana in this. He's just very cool character. I love his performance. He just mucks in. He's not shy of getting his hands dirty, and he genuinely wants to help. He was a cool character, I reckon. So thumbs up for Terry Nation, because sometimes, supporting characters, they can come across a little bit like they're not really into it, or they don't really get the premise of why they're there in the first place. But he was a good one, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a classic looking face, isn't he? Like this classic, like you said, character face. And he is it's a good performance. I think he suits the character really well. I didn't realise, I think at this point during his career, he was more or less deaf as well. So I think it made it harder for him to sort of interact with the characters, if you like. But he is a good, I think I read that somewhere that he was very hard of hearing or something. But yeah, I think he's a cool character, and I like the actor who's playing him. Like I said, he's got this really interesting face, that, like you said, the jawline, the crazy hair and stuff, that means that when you do first meet him, you think, yeah, he could be evil, but he turns out to be, like a really nice guy, and he survives actually to the end, doesn't he? I remember thinking, he's probably going to get killed off, because he seems like the sort of character they would bring in just to make you like him, to kill him at the end, but he does survive to the end, doesn't he? So.
He does, yeah, he's cool. And he went on to have a fairly decent career in both film and TV. Doctor Who was one of the first things that he did.
Yeah.
And then he went on to do things like Grange Hill. Shortly after that, he did some theatre work and stuff. Then he went on to do things like, he was in a big film, Kingdom of Heaven, Hot Fuzz, Cockneys versus Zombies. Yeah, he was in Derek. He was in Sherlock. And then stopped acting when he was 28 in 2018, and he sadly left us last year in January. He was 87.
I was going to say, I mean, he looks quite old in this, but maybe he wasn't as old as he looked then, because
no, he wasn't.
Yeah, some of that stuff's quite recent, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he went on to have a fairly decent career, which is cool. But in this story, anyway, he was. I thought he was pretty cool. I think it was a pretty cool character, Tyson.
Yeah, I liked him.
Yeah. What about the two? Well, first of all, the commander for the Movellans. So that was Commander Sharrell, I think, was the main dude for the Movellans.
Yeah.
And okay, what's your? I'd love to get your thoughts on whether you thought they played, an android convincingly, because with some actors who are playing robots or androids, they either go one of two ways, I find. They either underplay it, which I think these guys did, or they just ham it up completely and start doing like fake, like, you know, your uncle that's had a few beers at the barbecue and starts robot dancing. You know, they start doing that kind of thing, and you think, oh God, are you trying to play a robot by any chance? But I think these guys, they underplayed it because they come across very human-like. They're not. I don't think they're meant to be viewed as, you know, your typical sort of robot androids and stuff. So, how do you think these guys played it? And Commander Sharrell, played by Peter Straker, he was okay. He didn't blow me away, I have to be honest. Neither of the Movellans did. There was I don't know, there was something about them that was a little bit, I don't know, lackluster, I guess. But what are your thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, I do feel the same. I think they're okay. It is difficult because I guess they are trying to underplay it by being, you know, not giving human reactions to things. So like you said, sort of very sort of monotone performance. But it's difficult to do that and not give a boring performance. So they do also try to inject a bit of life into it, which they more or less do. I mean, they are memorable as characters. And I don't know if that's more down to the look of them than the actual performance. But I thought they're okay, mate. I mean, the other one's Tony Osaba. Never sure how you say his name. Because they all kind of do the same thing, don't they? They've kind of got the, you know, they've got the memo. We're Android, so we're all very sort of like this. So, yeah, I don't know, mate. I know what you mean. I just think it's a tough call because you either go one way or the other. And I think they've tried to sort of find a middle ground to be like androids, but not be too robotic. I am an android, but also not be too monotone. So, you know what I mean? They're going for that middle ground. And I think they more or less nail it, I think.
Yeah. I think for the most part they did. I don't know. I just found them a bit like
it's a bit.
Sorry,
it's a bit theatrical when they die, isn't it? Like the whole performance around them is quite so theatrical. Yeah, but I think that's just of the time, you know. I think that's just of this sort of style of television at the time. It kind of works for me, I think. Yeah. Not going to beat them up on them too hard, but I don't know. Anyway, they were fine. They were okay. Yeah. What about David Goodison then as Davros? I think if they'd have treated his voice in the same way as Michael Wisher, do you think his performance is on par or better or worse? For me, I don't feel he's as animated and as intense as Michael Wisher. I'd have loved to have seen a little bit more. I don't know, because the most intensity that you see from David Goodison is when he's pedaling like mad, you know, to move the thing. But whereas in Genesis of the Daleks, and I know you shouldn't always compare, but with Michael Wisher's performance, he was really like so sinister. And then when he lost his rag, you really felt it as well. I felt like David Goodison was like, he was like 80% there. You know, I feel like Ken Grieve should have been like, look, Dave, we're going to need a bit more from you here, mate, because Davros, he's known for sort of losing the plot a little bit and going a bit nuts. So you're really going to have to go for it a bit here. You're a bit, you know, don't hold back. So I'd like to have seen a bit more from him, but a bit like most of the things in this story, not terrible, but not fantastic either. The best way I can put it. Yeah, it definitely would have helped if they could have treated his voice just a little bit, because he does sound a little bit too human. It just hasn't quite got that Davros sound.
It hasn't got that, you know, it's in the Genesis of the Daleks, Davros had this kind of like voice modulation thing going on. Modulation,
yeah.
That would have gone a long way, actually.
It would.
Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I know what you mean, dude.
I remember a friend of mine actually talking about this, and he'd found some YouTube clip where someone had altered the voice to make him sound more Davros-y. And it was surprising what a difference it made, actually, because it just makes him sound a bit more threatening when he's got that modulation. But the word you use, mate, is absolutely spot on. He hasn't quite got the intensity of Michael Wisher's performance. So I think actually David Goodison was better than I remembered rewatching this. But he hasn't got that intensity or the calmness that Michael Wisher had, like the calculating Davros side, where you just thought he was constantly plotting and thinking the whole time. You know, David Goodison's performance is more, he does a bit of shouting and he gets a bit irate. And to be honest with you, sometimes I found him unintentionally funny when he was getting annoyed. You know, like when he knocks away the jelly baby, it's almost like a spoilt child, you know. So he didn't quite have, and I'm going to use the word again because I think it's absolutely spot on, the intensity of Davros, but he wasn't bad, like you said. He you know, if you never saw Michael Wisher's Davros, and this is the first time we met Davros, it's still a decent performance, I think, from him. But he was hindered, mate, like you said, no modulation, the mask doesn't fit properly. He's following in the footsteps of Michael Wisher. It's you know, it's kind of all up against him. So I think he does a pretty good job bearing that in mind.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that, mate. Yeah, it's not. I'm rewatching it. I haven't seen it in years, but rewatching it last night, I didn't come away thinking, "Oh, Jesus," you know, David Goodison's terrible as Davros. It wasn't like that. It was just wanted to. It would have been great to have seen a little bit, just see him cut loose a little bit more.
Definitely.
And properly go for it, yeah. So, okay. What about Lala Ward then as Romana?
Lala.
I think she's really good in this one, mate. I think she, you know, post regeneration, you know, it's very clear that compared to when the Doctor regenerates, it's a lot more straightforward in this regard. It's just, what looks nice? Oh, that does. Let's go then. Off we go. So that opening scene was very cool, and then she gets stuck in a little bit, and there's other scenes like when she gets captured and gets put to work in the mines. She immediately wants to escape. She doesn't want to die down there, but she fakes her death, stops the hearts, and you know, and she's back up there, and the stuff with the Movellans, you know, that, you know, she's in it a lot, you know, compared to some other companions in Tom's era. She's in it an awful lot, and the chemistry, like we said at the beginning, the chemistry is great between her and Tom. So performance-wise, I really like Lala Ward in this one. She has there's a bit of range in there as well. You know, when when she shouts, you know, when she's been interrogated by the Daleks, she absolutely yells at the top of her voice, and there's other scenes where she's crying and she's stuff, and then she's laughing in other scenes with Tom stuff. So she had some good range in this one, and yeah, I think she had a good one. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely agree. In fact, it's I never think of her as Princess Astra. You know, I never sort of look at her and think, oh yeah, she was also, until I'm reminded, like at the start where the Doctor's like, you can't have that face, because she's played Princess Astra in the previous story. What's it called? Armageddon Factor, isn't it? But as Romana, mate, I think she's great casting. I really like the idea they went with as well. I don't know whose idea it was, to have her costume sort of matching the Doctor's, but be like a more sort of feminine version. I think that works really well, and it totally suits her. Does she wear it in just this story, or does she wear it more? No, she's got it on for other ones, like 9-1, hasn't she, I think. Anyway, but yeah, no, Lala's, I think, is good in it. I think she sort of finds her feet very, very quickly. And again, just to echo what you said, the chemistry with Tom is great. I wish this had carried on. It is such a shame that their relationship soured, because you really can tell in those later episodes that the two of them are not getting on. But in this one, mate, the bants the bants between the two and the scenes between them are just joyous. You know, they're just really, really fun to watch. I think it's a good performance from Lala. For her first story as Romana, I think she hits the ground running.
Yes, agreed. Good one. And then Tom, I'll let you go first on this one, dude. What are your thoughts on Tom Baker in this story then?
I really liked him in it, actually. I thought Tom felt energized in it. He's got some lovely humour, which I think Douglas Adams must have written. It doesn't. A lot of the lines he's delivered, well, they feel a bit like Tom Baker lines, but I think at this point he was still being reined in enough that they would have actually been in the script. So I think there's some great moments in this from Tom. And he feels, there are some stories where we say, even when Tom's great, there are stories where he feels like he's not into it, or he feels a bit, I'm trying to think of a word that's not a swear word, worn out. He feels a bit like he's perhaps had a few too many down the pub last night. The energy is not there, sort of thing. Whereas this one, for me, he's darting about the screen. He's delivering the lines well. Love the scenes with Davros, where with just the two of them, we get a couple of nice scenes like that. There is that famous bit where he messes up the line and he says, "Back off," because I'm not sure, he's almost like he's mixed up two words, but they don't bother to refilm it, probably didn't have time. But no, Tom's good in this one for me, mate. I really feel like he's got the energy levels up right, and I enjoyed his performance a lot, because he does change a lot as the Doctor. If you think about Arc in Space, you think about Tom's first season, how he is in that story compared to this, and then compare this to how he is at the end of season 18. Three very sort of different takes on the Fourth Doctor. There is a real progression with Tom, and I guess that's because he was the Doctor for so long. That's pretty natural, but I do love that, and I think we're in the kind of middle to end period where he's still firing on all cylinders, but he's absolutely become the Doctor, hasn't he? In real life, I think he just was the Doctor at this point. So yeah, I love him in it, to be honest. Yeah,
same dude. Defo, I echo your thoughts, man. I think he's charged up in a few scenes, and he's good to rock and roll in any of those scenes, regardless of what characters are in the scene with him, whether it's sort of the sort of friendlier, funny stuff with Romana, or the intense stuff with Davros and all that. Yeah, it's a great performance, and you're right. He does change his approach to how he plays the Doctor slightly in each season, each series, and even some stories. As you go from story to story, you can see a change in him and stuff. So for him, it's one of those just solid performances. Really, he's very good. No complaints.
Solid performance.
Yeah, no complaints. Anything else on your notes before we put a score on this bad boy?
No, I was just looking at my notes. I've got boom, boom, Davros written down. I think that's just because the Doctor says that. Liked Romana in the tube with the detonating bomb. I thought that was a cool cliffhanger. Dudley's music, mate. We always mention the music. I didn't really notice much from him in this. It wasn't until today when I actually I was reading the listeners' comments, which we'll get to in a second. Someone mentioned there's hardly any music in it. I thought, actually, nothing stood out for me in this with the music. So I don't know if anything did for you or if it just blended in, but I didn't notice much from Dudley in this one. But maybe I'll listen out a bit more for it next time I watch it. But
no, you're right.
Stand out for you?
No, there isn't much in it. Normally you have like a theme that sort of repeats throughout. That's Dudley's, unless Dudley's going through one of his experimental phases. Typically, you have like a sort of motif or something that applies to the aliens or a situation that repeats a couple of times in each episode. But there wasn't really anything going on with that. I mean, I think Murray Gold riffs on there's a couple of scenes where when the Daleks are coming into the scene, there's like this kind of deep bassy section, and you can tell that Murray Gold lifted that a little bit into his stuff. That like dum 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 dum. That sort of thuddy, deep. So a couple of bits with that, but otherwise fairly light on the ground, dude.
And you'd think with a Dalek story, Dudley would throw everything at it, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering actually if maybe because again, just going back to that JNT book, there's a section where he talks about taking Dudley out for a meal because he's going to let him go. So JNT's obviously taking over, and he's decided he wants more electronic, modern music for the next season that he's going to produce, and he takes Dudley out for a meal, and it's like, Saturday, whatever, the 15th of January, JNT takes Dudley out for a meal, and Dudley's very excited, thinking that JNT wants to talk to him about season 18 and is furious to discover that he's being dropped. He wasn't happy, mate. Wasn't. I mean, the thing is, Dudley, bless him, I love his music, but he's been doing it for a long time at this point. Only natural that JNT would want to freshen things up and try different composers. But yeah, Dudley not happy. So maybe this is just after that lunch, mate. Dudley's like, J&T's. Actually, it's not J&T in charge at this point, is it? But anyway, maybe Dudley just wasn't feeling it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a bit of a muted soundtrack to this one, but
yeah,
there we go. Yeah. Right, okay. Whose turn is it first to put a score on this? I think it might be me. I'm going to give this, bud, a 6.5 out of 10 because I think it's a decent enough watch. It's definitely not as bad as what a lot of people say or their view on it is, which is fine. And yeah, I think it's just a little bit underrated. A lot of people will actually... When I say that people don't rate this one, I really mean it. If you go to a Doctor Who convention or just a Comic-Con, whatever, and mention Destiny of the Daleks, people will just be like, oh, it's terrible. Absolutely terrible. Can't watch it. Bad. They'll give it like, 2s and 3s. So I don't think it's definitely bad at all. It's not down there with those scores. So it's watchable and it's enjoyable and I quite like it. I love Tom and Lala together in this one. It's got some great scenes. So yeah, a 6.5 for me. What about you?
I'm slightly surprised by your low score there. I thought you'd be around the 7, but I'm 7.5, mate. I find it. I do totally agree with what you just said, but I do find it an enjoyable watch. I've watched it a few times over the years, and I enjoy it every time I watch it. Even though I'm always left feeling a little bit underwhelmed by it by the time I get to the end, I just find it enjoyable. So 7.5.
Cool. Okay. Right. Let's see what our awesome listeners thought to this one then. So on Facebook first, actually, Charlie Turner says, more like Destiny of the Dustbins. It's cliche to say that the Daleks in this one are like chicks on the farm that go cheap, cheap. The only person who I think at least tries is David Goodison as Davros, even if the mask is clearly doesn't fit him in the mouth, especially looks horrendous. Worst Dalek story thus far in Doctor Who history, 3 out of 10. A true disappointment after Genesis. Oh dear.
Yeah, Charlie, not a fan.
No. Brian Mattox says, dragged me into the Whoniverse. Did that 4-eps age 9. Oh, okay, so that might have been your first one, Brian. Cool. Mark Hugill says, positives. Romana's new body options at the start and the rock, paper, scissors. Movellans were decent enough. David Goodison was fine, though not as strong as Michael Wish's Davros. Main downfall for me was not having much incidental music, which meant there was no tension. Big mistake. A 6, though, out of 10. Simon Lockwood. I remember watching this when it came out, and while some scenes were effective at the time, like the Daleks breaking through the wall, he says I was only 9, it all looks really cheap now as a result. The Daleks look battered, the extras look like they can't be bothered, although I quite like the Movellans, and not a patch on Genesis. 4 out of 10.
4.
Lewis Gallagher says some of the comedy works, but other times it goes way too overboard. See a Dalek being defeated by sticking the Doctor's hat on its eye. It goes on to say that the Daleks look cheap and battered, blah, blah, blah. He goes on to say, standout moment, it's probably Tom's fluff line of now, back off.
Back off.
Yeah. Cast are all trying, but needless to say, not really a fan of this one. Oh, dear.
Okay.
Over on Twitter, DW Sebling says, one of the first classics I saw, and it has a special place in my heart. It may not be the strongest Dalek story, but it's fun, and I adore it. So rewatchable too. Oh, nice.
Cheers, Seb.
Sebasaurus Rex, from one Seb to another Seb. It shouldn't work, but it does. The Movellans being shown how logic works via rock, paper, jelly babies is genius. The Mexican standoff is great, and Tom really shines in those scenes with Davros playing for time. I could go on, but the character limit won't let me. So 7 out of 10 from Seb. It's a good score, that one.
Cool. Yeah.
Herald of Creation says the visuals are great, and it has probably 3 of the best cliffhangers in the history of the show. But the Daleks are badly treated and it feels somewhat lackluster. However, it was a very special place for me as it was the first story I saw in colour. Wow. Ooh. Cheers, Herald of Creation. Okay. Doctor Who Home says one of the first classic DVDs I had, so I've got a lot of happy memories. Part 1 is great, but once things get moving, it doesn't go anywhere. Probably for the best, this was The Last of Nation. 6 out of 10. Oh, this was the last one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think yeah.
So, yeah.
Dublin Fox 98 says, didn't care for it on DVD. Seeing it on Blu-ray, came to appreciate it the same way as Revenge of the Cybermen. Mediocre and basic, but still enjoyable, mainly down to the TARDIS team. Tom and Lala are on top form, and Nation still makes the Daleks ruthless. Davros blows, though. 5 out of 10.
Oh, low.
It goes on to say it's probably the least of 20th century Dalek tales in terms of story or execution, but controversial take. If I want a fix of dastardly Dalek adventure, I'd watch this over Death or Revelations. Ooh. Interesting. Okay. Prepare the Time Lash podcast. Says, a weird story mashing together Terry Nation's humorless greatest hits with Douglas Adams' absurdisms. The intro of the Movellans is interesting, but the Daleks are now suddenly robots. It's wildly uneven. 4 out of 10.
Okay.
Prepare the Time Lash podcast. We'll check those guys out. Pintox and Wormwine. There's some great names on these this week.
Some great names, yeah.
One of those stories that give the Daleks a big reveal, even though they're in the title. Davros is a changed man. How long was he left just lying around? Though the shoddy Dalek props work, looks like the Daleks really are on the back foot in their war with the Movellans. Very true. Bunny Galore says, my all-time favourite guilty pleasure story. It might be disco, but I love as much as I did in 1979. 10 out of 10 for me. And anyone can fight me on that. 10 out of 10.
Okay.
Nice. Wow. We have a few more. I'm going to rattle through these now. So Academic Dalek says, Movellans are inferior adversaries. Dalek triumph was never in doubt. And he put a cool little meme there. Thank you very much. PlayStation Gamer 187 says, not my fave, but still enjoy watching it. 6.8. Tom Turlow says, like most of the stories from Tom's penultimate series as the Doctor, this isn't great, but he's always good value, and Lala's costume is great. So the Daleks make quite an impressive entrance at the end of episode 1. And apart from that, it's nothing special, although I suspect if I'd been old enough to remember the character, the reveal of Davros would have blown my mind. Middle of the road Baker Who, but all Baker Who is worth a watch. So 6 out of 10. Nicely put. Yeah. Cool. Michael says, I want to like it more than I do. It feels like Douglas Adams pushed the humour too hard in this one, so I'll give it a 4.
4, okay.
Yes. Jar Jar Toff just says, didn't like it. Humanoids rivaling Daleks and that Davros. And lastly, Chippy T says, don't mind Tom, don't mind Lala, and like the idea of a flat battery Davros. I could really do without another Dalek story, though. Not bad on a first watch, but not to go back to too often. 6 from me.
Okay, wow.
Wow, so thank you very much, all of you. We had loads on the Twitter this week, so thank you very much for all of your thoughts and scores, and on Facebook, thank you very much. So I think the average score on this dude is probably a 6, I'd say, which is better than what I thought it was going to be, to be honest. So pretty sweet, not too bad. Next week, what we got next week, dude?
Next week, so because we've still got quite a few Toms left to do, we will be doing another 4th Doctor story. We're going up to the next season, and we're reviewing Meglos. Meglos, Cactus at the Ready.
Yeah, and an interesting coincidence, this one as well. We've gone from one story where you've got 2 factions at war at a stalemate to another 2 factions in a bit of a stalemate. So we'll see how this compares.
Indeed.
And see how that gets on. Yeah, so next week we're going to be reviewing the 4th Doctor story, Meglos. And I think we'll run it there, dude. Let's wrap it up for episode 392.
Alrighty.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Big Blue Box podcast. That was 392. We're nearly at 400 episodes, which is crazy to think about.
Madness.
Yes, and next week, just a bit of fun trivia. When we record next week's episode, it will be exactly 10 years since we started the podcast.
How is that possible?
That's pretty nuts.
That's crazy.
Crazy that. Anyway,
Wow.
so yeah, thank you very much again for all of you for commenting on this week's story, Destiny of the Daleks. And next week, as Adam said, we're going to be reviewing another Tom Baker story, Meglos. So get your DVDs out, or your Blu-rays, or your BBC iPlayer. I think they're still on BritBox as well. Whatever you've got it on, get that watched, because we'll be asking for your thoughts and your scores as always. In the meantime, make sure you're following the podcast in your fave podcast app. If you don't follow us yet, but you're listening to the episodes, give it a follow or a subscribe, depending on what app you're in. That way you won't miss an episode. It will land automatically every single Friday for you. And you can listen for free on the website as well, which is bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk. And you can check out the reviews and articles and all that good stuff from the writing team on there as well. We're on the socials too, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, links on the website. Come and interact throughout the week. And we have a free Discord server, so hop in there and chat Doctor Who too. Also, don't forget to remember to check out Adam's channel over on YouTube. It is, of course, The Geek's Handbag.
The Geek's Handbag. Yeah, go check out my YouTube channel.
Indeedy. All the good stuff there. So until next week, my name's Gary.
My name's Adam.
And remember...